this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN friend Mandy Felder. Come along as Michael Dexter and Holly Briggs talk with Mandy about her passion for pediatric trauma care. She will also discuss why she believes it's important to take that next step in professional development, because even a small step is significant. This episode is called Creating Space for Pediatrics and Trauma Services.
Hello, and welcome to the BCEN Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCEN certification holders, and industry professionals. But most importantly, to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always valuable. I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCEN, and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, Director of Professional Development at BCEN. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Holly.
It's good to have you with us. In this episode of BCEN and Friends, we have Mandy Felder. Mandy is in all things pediatric and trauma. She's passionate about making sure that kids are getting the care they need, especially when it comes to trauma-related injuries. Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCEN friend, Mandy?
Yeah, absolutely. Mandy Felder is a leader in pediatric trauma care with over 20 years of pediatric nursing experience. She's currently the Pediatric Trauma Program Manager at an ACS Level II trauma center in South Carolina. Mandy serves on the South Carolina Emergency Medical Services for Children Committee, as well as the Trauma Advisory Committee. She's an active member in several professional organizations, including the Trauma Association of South Carolina, Pediatric Trauma Society, and the Society of Trauma Nursing. She teaches ENPC, TNCC, and pediatric trauma across the care continuum. She holds her master's in nursing administration and organizational leadership, as well as the TCRN and CPEN credentials. Mandy is passionate about improving care for children in the prehospital and hospital setting and promoting injury prevention efforts and education. So with that all said, Mandy, welcome to the BCEN and Friends podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us how you got into this whole pediatric realm of care. Not everybody goes into life wanting to be a nurse. So obviously, thank you for that. But pediatrics is scary to a lot of people, and pediatric trauma is even more scary. So how in the world did you end up in this whole world of pediatric trauma care?
Yeah, so funny. I was trying to go back to like, when did I really first like this? I've always been a very, I think, caring person and like to help others. And actually, I think it all started in high school. I was able to assist during one of my study hall periods with one of our special education classes in high school. It was a class for students with physical and developmental disabilities. And it was a very small class, 4, 5, 6 students. There was one in particular that just would make my day when I got to spend time with him. He was, for the most part, in a wheelchair. However, he did have a special rolling walker that he would get to get into for some periods of time of the day. And I got the thrill and the joy of spending time with him, kind of ambulating and up through the halls of the school during that period, and just getting to know him, getting to help him with part of his physical therapy and stuff. So honestly, I originally thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, but I've always enjoyed working with kids of all ages. So I think that's kind of where that passion came, was really started with that special education class. And it was very rewarding. And I really just enjoyed the time I got to spend with them.
So tell us a little bit about you. You obviously went to nursing school at some point, and then did you start directly in an ER? Did you start out in a trauma bay, or did you start in a pediatric floor, or what happened there?
I actually got into the hospital. I still work for the same facility that I started at almost 23 years ago this May. And I started as a student nurse tech, so I could kind of get my feet in the door while I was in nursing school, and wanted just whatever job was available. So I ended up actually on a adult medical surgical floor. I only spent about a year there, knowing that the pediatrics was really where I wanted to be. And then they had a student nurse extern program over the summer for anyone in their senior year of nursing school. And the only pediatric availability they had for that was actually the pediatric ER. And at that time, I thought I did not want emergency nursing. I really thought there's no way people make careers out of that, and that it's got to be too high burnout and those kind of things. But I wanted peds, so I said, sure, I'll take it. And proved myself completely wrong of my initial perceptions and opinions, and fell in love. Just really realized that emergency nursing was something that I really enjoyed. I loved the 2 months that I got to spend in that externship, and they kept me on as a student nurse tech my last semester of nursing school, and then hired me as a new grad. So that's kind of where the passion for emergency nursing, specifically pediatric emergency nursing, started.
So they hooked you while you were still a student, and man, that is awesome. Also, to hear that you've been at the same health organization for almost 23 years, that is not something you hear all the time. You're certainly someone who stayed while a lot of people move around, especially from different hospitals or different organizations. So the fact that you've been there in longevity means that you've really seen a lot of growth and changes over that period of time. I'm sure that you could probably recount changes not only in like location, but technology and processes, and how when new guidelines come out, how an organization then has to acclimate to those and change practices and so forth. So really, just if you can kind of talk to us a little bit about the roles that you've kind of moved through in these past 23 years, but also like where have you seen the biggest advancements over that period of time?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned, I started as a student nurse tech and had a brief stint as a student nurse extern. With the difference in the two is one was like a technician position, but it was meant for students in school, in nursing school. And then the student nurse extern was more of like a shadowing position where I got to do a little bit more of actual nursing care. And then I was a staff nurse in the ER for about 3.5 years before I got approached about a management position, which I had said I would never do. But it's funny. My primary advice I give friends and family when there's a new parent, they're expecting their first child, is never say never. Because as a mom myself, you will at some point do something that you thought you would never do as a parent. And I feel like the same has kind of gone for my career in nursing. And so, yeah, when I was approached with the vacant management position about, you really should apply. And I'd always said no. I was like, maybe, and I think a lot of that stems from just my desire to be proactive, not reactive, right? So I really enjoyed assisting my prior leaders with improving care for our patients. So, are we providing the best care? Are there guidelines that we need to create, develop, or revise to meet the advancements in technology and evidence-based practice? What do my fellow staff nurses need? Like, as nurses ourselves, there's oftentimes that there's things we need, whether it be equipment or education or something, to really provide the best care and fulfilled in our role. And so I really wanted to be able to impact that as well. So I kind of had that passion in that 3.5 years as a staff nurse, and we're picking up some additional responsibilities to assist with that. And I think that's what kind of pushed me to actually apply for that management job, as I could see, okay, let me not look at it as managing individuals, but being able to manage the care and provide for my other staff nurses and get the things that we need. And I was in that role for 7 years in the same pediatric ED. And then through that time, again, 10.5 years in the ED at that time as an RN, I just really found my passion for trauma specifically, and began working. My facility is a level 1 adult and level 2 peds trauma center currently, but at the time they had been a state level 1 adult center for decades, but they were finally going for ACS Level I. And because we have a children's hospital and a PEDS ED, we were admitting way more than the 100 PEDS patients that the ACS looks at, where they're also going to look at your pediatric care when they come and survey you as like a combined center, or I think they're referred to it now as an adult center with PEDS capability. So the adult trauma program manager at the time really leaned on me for a lot of the survey prep and meeting certain criteria as far as our pediatric trauma care. And so I got involved early on. And then they had their survey in 2013 and passed and became an ACS Level I adult with a PEDS capability. But based on our volumes, I think at the time we were right around 300 pediatric trauma admissions a year. They really suggested that we should go for a pediatric verification as well. And so they created the PEDS trauma program position in late 2013. And I think I was, again, kind of targeted, but I also knew that I really wanted that job. But I was targeted as well by that adult trauma program manager and the trauma medical director. And I've been in this role now for 10 years and just love all the opportunities that role gives me. I still get to help with pediatric care and making sure we're given the best care we can here in our hospital. I still get to assist nurses and making sure that they have what they need to do their jobs. But I also get to expand that role and involve myself with our state trauma system, be on committees that are across the whole nation in how we provide care to our pediatric trauma patients. So it's just very rewarding.
Well, you've talked a lot about your organization and really like what I would consider like your job responsibilities and how those have shifted over time. And then you just briefly started moving into state committees, national committees. And that's what I was about to segue right into as well, is there's a difference between our job commitments and the things we do for work and then the things we do outside of work. And you clearly have a family and you have other things, but you've also obtained your CPEN credential, your TCRN credential, you volunteer. So what is, apart from just being a busy human being all the time, what is keeping you motivated to constantly be involved, even in things you're not getting paid for? Because I get that pushback sometimes when I encourage people like, hey, get involved at a state or a national level. Well, I don't get paid for that. I don't have time for that. But there's people like the three of us that, in this conversation, that we see a lot of the value in volunteerism and in collaboration. And so if you could just maybe speak a little bit to how these things outside of what you would consider your standard work requirements have really impacted you as an individual.
Yeah, again, I think it just mostly stems from my passion for pediatric trauma, but I see opportunities with my current role, doing PI case reviews and talking with our pre-hospital providers and thinking through discharging patients to rehab centers and things like that. You really get to see the whole care continuum and recognize areas that things could be better, right? And I said before, I like to be very proactive and not reactive. Obviously, sometimes it's necessary to be reactive when you find things, but instead of just always being, the Monday morning quarterback, I like to say, okay, this was an issue. This is why it was an issue, but is it something that we can prevent from happening again? And that's really taken me into those avenues of working with our state emergency medical services for children. I've been on that committee now for probably more than a decade itself, and have been able to assist that committee with improving our regulations for not just pediatric trauma care, but medical care in the pre-hospital realm, like what equipment is included on the mandated equipment list that they carry on the ambulances. Because, we all start somewhere, and Holly, you were mentioning advancements, and I think that's something we see, like, oftentimes we start somewhere, but it's really not where we need to be. And then over time, you realize there's a lot missing. We had a good start, a good foundation, but we recognize that, okay, we are just blanket stating we must have, and this is just an example, but cervical collars on an ambulance. But no one's regulated and mandated that it has to be multiple sizes to fit even our smaller patients. And so, we were able to take a look at things like that, the equipment list and the protocols and things, and really just found some opportunities where we were deficient in making sure that pediatric population was covered. And that's also been through like disaster preparedness, both in my organization and for the state, involving myself with those courses for educating our nurses. And I'm very passionate about pediatric readiness, and that's in all realms of healthcare. One thing you will know, as many ER nurses do, even though I work at a facility that has a separate pediatric ER, pediatric patients are going to arrive to any ER anywhere. And a lot of times you come across nurses that say, oh, I'm not a peds nurse. But if you're an ER nurse, you are a peds nurse, because at some point you're going to care for a pediatric patient. And you got to be ready and knowledgeable and equipped to do so. And so I'm very passionate about not just the care that's provided in my organization, but knowing that a lot of our patients are transferred to us from non-specialty centers, and they need to be able to stabilize that patient and do the initial care as well and do it competently, right? And so I think those are the things that kind of drive me to take on those other tasks and volunteer my time and just get involved.
I think that's great. And I think there's a lot more opportunity than most nurses understand as well. And I think if somebody's listening to this podcast, wherever you are in your state or a national level, there's opportunities. I think part of it is just finding it and reaching out and not being afraid to ask questions. And I've been involved on very similar levels, and also with, pediatric maternal infant death review committees in states. And there's just so many different things that ER nurses can make a huge impact on that I think are available if we just look for the opportunities. So just kind of a follow-up question there is, like, how did you find some of these opportunities? Is it something you sought out? Is it something that came to you, kind of a combination of the two?
I think there's multiple ways that they come to you, right? So sometimes you're seeking an answer to a question or concern based on a patient you've treated or something you see at your facility. And as you start looking for, whether it be, knowledge or resources, you come across these societies and things and work that others are doing. So initially I was approached about the Emergency Medical Services for Children's Committee. You get to meet new people and network with other organizations and individuals when you do attend certain meetings and committees. And I think it just grows from there, right? Like other opportunities come about, or, they've worked with you before and they think, oh, we should really involve Mandy or, someone else because they are passionate about this, or they've been very helpful. Or we really enjoy working with that person. But the same thing, even with like the education courses, if you enjoy teaching others, even if it's not maybe the get up in front of a crowd, because that's not really my favorite part of teaching. I like getting to know the nurses. I like getting to, assist them in furthering their knowledge on pediatrics as well as trauma. And so kind of that one-on-one discussion is how I like to look at my training courses and the courses I teach, or look at as precepting. So, that's always a like homegrown thing. But if you find that there are things that you're passionate about, whether it's because of a particular patient you've treated, or maybe even a family member, something you've gone through with your own personal life, really just seeking what are opportunities that can fulfill and reward you through that passion. So I would say starting with seeking knowledge, whether it be searching for webinars and education yourself, and then seeing who's out there presenting those things, right? And what other opportunities do they have? I know we discussed, I hold 2 BCEN certifications, and I still am learning all the time from you about all the ways that BCEN is out there and assisting nurses and engaging nurses. And so I think that's wonderful, but I don't know all the great things you guys are doing. I'm still learning that. And I think just keeping your eyes open. Sometimes you just need another outlet to, again, feed that passion, fulfill yourself as a person. And you're right, there's so many opportunities between, state, regional, national committees, whether it be a task force, a working group, teaching nursing courses. And you'd be surprised when you're on these committees, just how much you may have to offer, even if you think you have nothing to offer that group. You'd be surprised to find out that you probably have a lot to offer, a lot.
We could just let you talk for, I don't know. I like, we could just give you the rest of the podcast. I feel like you've given such great encouragement. And I think anyone listening to this who's wondering like, gosh, do I have anything to give? The answer is yes. You will bring value, and you just have to be open to those opportunities and willing to give it a try. I think that oftentimes when you do take those opportunities, it moves you outside of your comfort zone, outside of maybe the people that you feel like know you well, and you're in kind of like, a different realm, different people, new people, and you're probably not so comfortable. But it's surprising when I look back on my career, when I've said yes to opportunities that kind of scared me a little bit or made me feel uncomfortable. I said yes. And then before I knew it, I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then the next time another opportunity, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to say yes. It consistently breeds this idea that while it may be a little scary and maybe a little uncomfortable, the reward for saying yes has been so fulfilling. And it's made me more passionate about my profession and about helping to mentor others and grow others. And it's giving me a wider sphere of influence. So I think that what you are saying is so impactful, and you've seen it in your own career in the way that you've been able to further yourself and then bring people behind you and say, no, come on, get on board, join this committee. It's fun. These people are fun. It'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're one of those people that you do say never, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't enjoy X, Y, whatever, I think finding a small task that you do feel comfortable with sometimes will kind of start the ball rolling. And then you realize, okay, I can see where I could impact something else. So let me, like you said, take a small step and just join this committee and show up on the meetings. And maybe I'll just sit back and listen and not talk. But then as the conversations progress, you realize like, okay, maybe I have some input that they, could be helpful. And you end up starting to share things and provide some information and expertise, and things become more comfortable. You personally grow through those experiences and maybe realize that, all right, this isn't as bad, or I want more, or, okay, I enjoyed this, but not that. And, then you can go more towards one direction. Speaking back to taking that management role, I had started taking on some things for the staff. Like my manager had said, okay, we're going to let you guys kind of handle your own schedule as long as it's filled, but we need a lead. And I was like, I'm willing to take that on. And it was kind of rewarding to have some staff ownership of that, not just myself, but the ownership for all of us to be able to work it out amongst ourselves and take it away from your managers and your leaders who you feel like sometimes might be saying, nope, you're going to do this, and nope, can't do that. And I've had certain patients that I learned something from it, but I also wanted to improve things so maybe it was different the next time I had that patient, or different from someone else who may have that patient. And so those are kind of how some of these things have started. And I mean, even simple tasks for nurses, an education opportunity on your unit. Maybe asking, your manager or your leader, could you do a bulletin board or maybe a 10-minute in-service at your staff meeting? Or even just like some hands-on skills during, shift huddles and things like that might help you grow. And again, just starting small like that. And then you realize like, oh, okay, I enjoyed that. Maybe I'll look for other opportunities like this.
Well, I want to shift it a little bit because you've been giving some great advice. You've been talking a lot about finding a passion, finding even a place at the table, even if you're quiet at first, all of these different things. But, not everybody grows up to be motivated like you are. We like to ask this question to everybody. Is there a particular time in your career, looking back, that you can say that is a particular patient experience or a particular family member or coworker really changed who you are today and really gave you that spark or motivation that you needed to be where you are today?
I think it's probably for me, like just a a lot of factors. I've always been an eager learner, so I think that plays a role into some of the things that I've sought out for myself, as far as certifications and my master's degree and things like that. It's just being that lifelong learner was kind of part of who I am. Personally, my father passed away at the age of 46. He suffered a very long time with being an alcoholic, and he died from complications from that. And it was a sudden kind of death, like not expected, but we all knew that he wasn't in the best of health because of his decisions in life. And I was newly married in my 20s, a newer nurse, had a 18-month-old at home, and it provided a different level of understanding, respect for healthcare, but also looking at it from the family side of things. I've used that in my care of patients as well, that there are some things in life that you are going to be faced with and you could not have changed, right? You didn't ask to be the trauma patient today. You didn't ask for, a family member to have a mental health issue or a physical diagnosis that has them in that hospital. And some of those things you find out that day, like your life is turned upside down that moment, that day. And using what I went through with my father, but also seeing these families come in, kind of was a driver for me to look at the whole picture and the big picture. And it really started me thinking and engaging in not just the care we were providing in the walls of the ER, but what has happened to get that patient here. So pre-hospital, or even the transfer from another facility. That are those things going to impact that family financially, physically? Were they separated because they were all in a car accident together and, ended up at different centers? And then even just after, the care doesn't stop, whether they're discharged home or whether they're admitted as an inpatient. These things are going to affect that family and that patient ongoing. And so I really think that experience with my dad, and again, with just seeing what my trauma patients and their families were going through, led me to look at that whole picture and what happened before. Who were they before, right? Because life as they know it may not ever look that way again. And that's life-changing and difficult. At the same time, they're going to need things when they leave. And while our primary role in the ER is stabilizing that patient, getting them taken care of so they can get to recovery, the things I do in that ER could impact them later. And so I think those are the things that kind of have shaped my career as well, and also probably contributed to some of my seeking out all these other opportunities we talked about.
Thank you, Mandy, for sharing that. I know a lot of times when it's a personal experience, especially, it's one thing to share when you've been the patient, but I think there's even a different and maybe sometimes far-reaching impact when you're the family member of the patient and you recognize that there's so many things that each and every person you interact with throughout that healthcare experience, they leave a little bit with you, or I should say they have the opportunity to leave a little bit with you. So when you go to work the next time and you've had this experience, then you are more likely to take a little bit extra time to maybe step just a little bit further, spend a little extra moment, maybe even impart a little more kindness, a little more empathy, a little more sympathy, a little more understanding, because you've been there. And I never want to wish an experience on anyone. I'm sure you wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, and we don't, but there are also things that we can take away from those really heavy moments that we can then turn those into things that maybe lighten the load for our patients, lighten the load for their family a little bit. And it's oftentimes nothing more than just maybe spending a little bit more time, maybe just saying things in a certain way, giving people the opportunity to feel like they've connected with another human being. So how you've been able to then turn that into impact is just really admirable. So thank you for sharing that with us. I get the portion of this podcast where I get to ask you a few rapid fire questions. And they're really just
right.
so we can get to know you a little bit better. So they're kind of your favorites. All right. If there was a career outside of healthcare that you would just like to try, what would it be?
Interior decorating. Totally, like not even close related. I really enjoy decorating. I think I get that from my mother. We joke with my mom all the time that her walls of her home that she's lived in for like 20 plus years probably have about 9 different layers of paint. But so growing up, teen years and stuff, like, she allowed us to have roles in redecorating our bedrooms, and that included paint and, of course, back in the day, wallpaper and things like that. And I just always enjoyed like having a vision and then being able to like see that vision through and pull things together. And, even in my adult life, as you purchase new homes or move and things or decor changes, your mood changes as to what you want in your home. I just always really enjoyed it. And I've actually had, some family and friends like reach out with like a room project, and, they've asked for help on it. And even outside of my own home and space, like helping others kind of see their vision through and find and create a space that they love is, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. Yeah, I like being creative. And so I think that kind of leads to the creative side of me. And it's just a lot of fun for me.
I love that. And it's so true that there are rooms that you can walk into and you feel like, oh, wow, this space is just really cool and clean and all together. And then you walk into another space and it's like, oh, wow, this is really like warm. And it's the colors and the different pieces of artwork. Like, it's just amazing how it can be the same exact dimensions in a room. But if it's just these little pieces here and there, and it can really change the entire feel. So
Absolutely.
I am grateful for people like you who are out there making space for us. All right. Got some more favorite categories. And these can be like all-time favorites, or they can just be whatever you're currently into. So favorite book.
I don't have a favorite. I prefer, or I'll say I won't prefer. I mostly read nonfiction, things on history or some self-help occasionally if it's something I'm interested in. If I'm going to read a fiction, I love like the Southern, Southeastern settings, kind of adventure or romance type of fiction books. So I don't have one favorite, but those are kind of the things I like or I'm drawn to.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I guess this is another one. Favorite movie, TV show, or it can be like a binge-worthy series.
So I have been binging a lot of crime documentaries lately. And it's amazing the things that are out there on Netflix right now, that are crimes or just very odd news stories that like you were even unaware of, right? Probably because when they occurred, we didn't have all the social media and stuff we have now, but I've really just been binging those. And there's not one particular series, because some of them are like, short series where they'll have like 8 episodes, but it's all about this one story. Or there's some out there that every episode's a new crime story or something. And I don't know, they're just very intriguing to me, some of the things that have gone on in this world that we are unaware of. Whether it be like a financial fraud. I mean, it's not all like, horrible violent stuff, but, some of it's like financial fraud and some of the like pharmaceutical, like even like some of the medical fraud type stuff. So they're just all really intriguing to me. And I think it's just, again, just being in that like shock of, oh my gosh, did that happen?
I know sometimes that saying like real life can be scarier or, more shock and awe than TV. And then like you see it and you're like, they're not making this up. This is not fiction. This actually happened. Yeah. I like some of those crime shows. I'm going to be honest. My husband's like a Dateline like binger. So he will tell me about some of these cases and I'm like, that can't possibly. And then he's like, no, it happened.
Right.
And I mean, I think anyone who's into crime shows finds themselves often going, I wonder what the next piece of evidence will show. I'm pretty sure it's going to be this person, like,
right.
you become like a detective
Yes, yeah.
Gosh,
And it's funny, I think going back to the emergency nursing thing, I always joke with people, especially being at a large tertiary center where I am, but like the things that you have seen in your career or heard from patients, unbelievable, right? And so I think that's kind of why I get intrigued in these crime stories too, because I joke as an ER nurse, I'm like, it can happen. Just trust me. I could probably tell stories of things you would never fathom, but I promise they can happen. I've heard it. I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up is one of our famous lines as ER nurses.
Exactly. You can't make it up. Like you can't.
No.
So true. All right. Favorite musical artist?
So I love country music. I love a lot of the 90s greats, George Strait, Garth Brooks. But as far as like the new age stuff, I'm more of like the Chris Stapleton, Luke Combs, Eric Church, Riley Green. And I'm going to throw a shout out to actually a personal friend who's in Nashville. He's seen more as a songwriter, but Ray Fulcher, and he writes with Luke Combs. So yeah, more of the... I don't even know what you call those guys these days, but I think they're people that lend kind of some vibe to the old 90s style and not so much of the new age country. Might be why I like them a little more than others. So
you listed a lot of good ones. So, all right. My last question for you is, what is your self-care go-to or a hobby outside of healthcare that just helps you reset?
I love spending time in the sun on a boat. We have a very large lake where I live, and if the weather is nice and warm and sunny, that's where I prefer to be. Just listening to music and riding on the boat. It could be, sometimes it's just me. I'll drive the boat myself. Spending it with family or friends is also great. So I would say that's kind of, if I had to pick one thing that just always just is what I would prefer to be doing, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all that with us and all your recommendations. If our audience wanted to follow you online, what social media platforms are you on?
The one that I would like to mention as far as public profile is definitely LinkedIn. I do go by Mandy. That is my preferred name, but on LinkedIn, it is Amanda Felder. So feel free to reach out to me and connect there. I'd love to chat with you and connect.
We will definitely add that to the notes, and we appreciate you meeting with us today, Mandy. It's been really nice talking with you and getting to hear all about your passion for trauma education, specifically pediatric, and all the things that you're doing. Just wanted to thank you for the work that you're doing. I know it impacts a lot of lives that we'll never see, but I appreciate always meeting people that are passionate about what they do and are passionate about growing as a professional, and you definitely are doing that. So thank you for speaking with us today. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Well, I want to take this time to thank Mandy for joining us for this episode of BCEN and Friends. Thank you, Mandy, for sharing your passion, your expertise, your knowledge with us. Mandy is also partnering with us on a continuing education webinar on the topic of pediatric readiness. So you can check out BCEN Learn as she shares more details and insight into this very important topic. Mandy, we truly appreciate all that you do. And to all of our listeners, we hope you will stay tuned as we continue with BCEN and Friends and bring you new, meaningful content and perspectives. If you have a suggestion for an episode, please email us at bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs here with Michael Dexter, and on behalf of the entire BCEN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you're doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, we are out.